A kid called me a the N-word, and I think I like pushed him or something, and I backed off, and then his friends grabbed me and like pulled my hands behind my back and just started punching me like Muhammad Ali when he fought my dad. I'll just use an example that some sports people would understand. Like, there was seemingly no hope for Ali, but he knew.
What's up, ladies and brochachas? Today we have sitting with us George Foreman III, aka the Monk, professional boxer with a 16-0 record, entrepreneur, founder and CEO of Recraft Boxing, and son of George Foreman, the former two-time heavyweight champion. It's an honor to have you on today, bro.
Pleasure to be with you, man.
Thank you. So I just want to say I love the concept of the training routine that you and your father utilized. The
torture chamber.
The torture chamber,
yeah.
Bro. That's absolutely epic, man.
That's what it was, man. Pure torture.
That's just not something that I couldn't do that myself, honestly, which is probably why I chose weightlifting over long endurance races.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's something like I used to not power lift, but I'll say like bodybuild in my early 20s, and it's tough. And what I always appreciated about the people that do it is the discipline to get to like that last like 1 or 2%, you know, of results. It takes so much discipline and attention to detail with like eating and supplementing and sleeping and resting, and like I can go on and on. So I don't find that to be easy either. But I will say the torture chamber was like, you know, just every week you're just like, you feel like you're flirting with death weekly on a weekly basis. Like, what is he going to do today? And like, how close am I going to get to the brink of death? And how am I going to respond? And that can do one on you mentally, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it can. I think it's honestly, those are more of a mental game. I feel like when it comes to like endurance.
Yeah. And boxing's like that. I'm getting, when I was young, I would have said it was 30% physical, 70% mental. Now I would say 90% mental, 10% physical. Because it's like the physicality of it, it's like you're not even in the discussion if you're not in shape, you know, to recover over 12 rounds. You're not in the discussion if you can't execute your fundamentals and have good timing and all those things. You're not even in the discussion. But at the highest levels, that's just 10% of it, you know. Your mentality is so important, which I'm just now figuring out. It is tough. So the torture chamber was apparently for that. I just thought he didn't like me.
Did your dad ever like discipline you? Did he have like hardcore discipline as a kid?
No, he didn't. He was more from a discipline. I mean, he did it in his own way. Like, we really didn't want to let him down. So like, the last thing we wanted to do was have him be disappointed in us. That was like the end of the world, you know? You'd almost prefer if a spanking was an option, you'd prefer that. It was that type of discipline that when he was disappointed, how much of a blow it was to you in your relationship. So I'm not sure how he developed that in us, where we really didn't want to disappoint him. I'm really not sure, but I think all my brothers and sisters would tell you that was always the worst thing that could happen.
Wow, that's powerful. It's really powerful. I feel like that my assumption would be that it just came from him being such an amazing leading figure in your life.
Yeah, I think so. I think, my dad's been a minister since, 1976. So we grew up in the church. So I think some of that influence is part of it, because it was never like, you know, even if your parents aren't hard on you religious wise, that there's, you know, the standard is not straight A's. The standard is not excelling in basketball or football or baseball. The standard is not making money. The standard is character, being a good human being, not being morally bankrupt. That's the standard, you know? So I think those are the things that I think that type of relationship with the church and him as our, you know, preacher instilled in us without him having to say anything. That would be my guess. And we all make mistakes. Me and my brothers and sisters make mistakes just like anybody else. But at the end of the day, we'd be embarrassed before we even made it to my dad. So
What's the earliest memory you have that defined your career as a boxer and entrepreneur?
I think as a boxer, that's easy. I remember I was 1 and I just moved from, when I was young, my parents split up and we moved to South Carolina for a few years. And then we moved back to Houston because my mom wanted me to be close to my father. And I was 6 and I think I was going into first grade, maybe kindergarten or first grade, probably first grade. And I was about to turn 7. Long story short, some kids, a kid called me a nigger, the N-word. And I think I like pushed him or something and I backed off. And I did something and I backed off. And then his friends grabbed me and like pulled my hands behind my back and just started punching me in the stomach more than the face, as I remember. And then I think I like reared back and like kicked one of the kids in the between the legs. And then the teacher came and pulled us apart. And long story short, I got beat up. And but I remember like feeling like I wish I had actually responded with my like full physicality to start off with, and that I hadn't waited for it to become like a full brawl for me to like really respond. By that point, my hands are tied behind my back. I'm outnumbered. And those kids went on to be my friends, so that's fine. But the point is,
They went on to be your friends?
Yeah. Like you get over that stuff when you're 5 or 6, and it was a different time. But the point was like I wish I hadn't waited. I wish I had been more aggressive, pulled the trigger, because he had already took it there. But I gave him a chance to kind of respond instead of finishing. I just wish I had been defending myself from the get-go. I'll put it that way, fully, and like made it not be to the point where he wasn't a threat anymore. And so the kids would have left me alone. So I remember thinking about that. And then I kind of forgot about boxing for years. And then when I was 6, I think I was 18 or 19, I was at a Lennox Lewis heavyweight match heavyweight championship match in LA, actually, here. And I was just traveling with my dad as his travel companion at the time. I was probably 18. And Lennox walked right past me, and Lennox was considered like a giant. Like, no, we hadn't seen a heavyweight champion that big, 6'6", 6'7", giant. He walked past me, and I looked at him, and I remember I thought to myself, he's not that big. And for that little moment, I was like, what if I could do this? I wonder if I could. And I think I was always curious about what I would become along the process of trying to get to becoming a champion, to get to that point. But that's my earliest memory. I think as an entrepreneur, I was 11 years old and almost 12, but maybe just turned 11. And my dad, he never gave me anything. If I asked him for anything, the answer was always no. He would give me $100 if I got straight A's every 6 weeks. Oh, awesome. But then my mom would take all of that. So it was just passed through. But long story short, I wanted to buy a Sam Cooke album. I was a big Sam Cooke fan, and it was just like set with two CDs, anthology or something like that, and it was like $36, and 32 could have been with tax, and I wanted it really bad, so I started a lawnmower business, printed whatever I had in paper left, and put signs all around. I got a few phone calls, and I was like, Mom, can you take me around to mow these lawns? And I got I think I made like $60 between her friends and a few people that called me up. And literally, as soon as I got done mowing the last lawn, we went right to the first CD store we could get to. I can see it in my head, and I bought it, and I was so happy. And I feel like I had the bug since then, that this idea that I could find things I want, and use skills that I already had to make money. That's I never thought about like having applying for a job after that. Even though I have in the past, but that was what I wanted to do.
I remember doing the same thing, man. My family had me mowing lawns, and my mom would pay me like $15.
Nice.
She's like, you need to like work for other people and like make more money. You need to learn how to like work a real job. So she had me do my own little like lawn mowing business too.
Yeah.
Everybody would pay like 3 times as much as my mom did. I was just like, Mom, I'm never gonna work for you. You can mow your own lawn.
Business lesson number 2, like family and friends always they never, you can't survive off family and friends. They always take advantage.
My mom would pay me like $1 for every like hour of piano I would play. I'm thinking back on it. I'm like, that's such a terrible wage.
At least she paid you something.
What I guess throughout that process, you got interested in boxing, I guess, or actually committing yourself to boxing when you were 18, 19, right?
Yeah. I think, boxing for me, like that, I saw Lennox Lewis and sorry, I'm like, I don't know why I think I slept too much last night, so I keep yawning. I got like 10 hours of sleep. It's crazy. I saw Lennox Lewis at that fight, and I said, oh, he's not that big. And then what happened right after that was the next time I saw Emmanuel Stewart, who was his coach. Emmanuel, I was like a monk, they call me, and my dad's kid, and they've been seeing me around since I was, probably 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. And he probably didn't mean it, but he saw me one day at one of the pre-fight dinners for the production crew, and he said, George, give him to me. I can make him a champion. He said, he's tall, long arms. He said, give him to me. And my dad would laugh, and he would say that every time we'd see him. I'd see him about 6 times a year at the big fights because he had a bunch of different fighters. And so I started to get this thing in my head, 19, 20, like maybe I could fight. And then I snuck into a boxing gym not too far from here, actually. When I was at Pepperdine, I went to Pepperdine for school, and I was like, let me see if I can do it, right? And the first day, they put me in the ring to spar. The second day, sorry. And I did okay. Like, I'm sure I looked like a bonehead, but I beat the guy up that they put me in there to spar. And the trainer was like, yo, I think you could really do this. And I was terrified for my dad to find out because boxing, he told us we couldn't do it unless we had a college degree, It's like, don't even bring it up. And so I had a really good day that day in the gym, and then I thought about coming back, and I remember on my way out, I was walking out, and I look up, and there's a poster of my dad, and I was like, you know what? If somehow the word gets back to my dad that I'm boxing, I didn't tell him I won't, we won't be getting along. So I put it down. Then I graduated from school, became my dad's business manager, believe it or not. I hadn't even graduated, actually, when I took that job. It was like a year and a half before I graduated, and was doing really good financially, at least making what I thought was a lot of money. And I gained like 100 pounds because I moved back to Texas, and I was eating like Frenchie's chicken. If you've ever been to Houston, go to Frenchie's. They have the best chicken. It's in 3rd Ward near U of H, and I was eating Chick-fil-A and Domino's Pizza, and I gained 100 pounds in 11 months. So I wanted to lose the weight, got into the boxing gym to lose the weight. I said maybe boxing can motivate me because like everything else I had tried hadn't worked. I was taking like every supplement in the world. I was taking Ripped Fuel. I don't know if you remember that. I don't know how old you are, but it was just like the worst thing you could take and to lose weight. And long story short, boxing, it really motivated me to lose the weight and be consistent and be disciplined. And I lost like 80 plus pounds in under a year. And then told my dad I wanted to have a boxing match, and he told me you're crazy. And then shortly thereafter, I convinced him to support me, just in general, to not be against me doing it. And then shortly thereafter that, he became my trainer. That's how it all started.
It's a long story of finally getting your dad to be a trainer.
Yeah, it wasn't the plan. Definitely was not the plan. I would have never planned that.
So why did he not want you guys to box until you got a degree?
I mean, I don't know. I think I can guess, and I think I'm probably close, but I think with my dad, we all have to understand that, he came from his mother was a sharecropper. She wasn't raised by sharecroppers. She was a sharecropper. Like, she worked the farm, and like, she remembers people, she'd have people coming that they worked with coming to buy the crops. They would make the big crop, on the railroad tracks where you see the metal pieces that the trains run on, and then the big pieces of wood under that. Mm-hmm. Her and her sisters would chop those and make those, and lift them and drag them, and I don't know how they did it. There was no men in the family, and her brother got in trouble because he murdered somebody in self-defense over something that obviously probably had to do with race. And so my grandfather always sat every single day on the porch with a shotgun, right? I mean, this is Marshall, Texas, the last Confederate state, stronghold city. And they call it the city of the 12 flags or something like that, or something or the other. So anyway, like, he grew up in like the South, And that, he was raised in that reality, right? So boxing was a way to pull them out. By the 1973, he was probably, I think he made that year 18 between then and after he fought Ali, probably $7 million. And that was a lot of money in 1973. There was no athlete that made that type of money ever, right? And so to him, boxing was a way to catch up, over the past few hundred years of poverty, slavery, and whatever you want to call it. And he's like, why after all that? And he was like, he always says, I was this close to being illiterate, right? He wanted to write a love letter, so he learned how to read, right? And he never complained about anything having to do with race. He actually doesn't even talk about it at all. But I think if I'm him, I'm thinking, well, I went through all this to provide for them. They can go to college. They can go to boarding school. They have all these advantages. Boxing, he wanted to be a teacher. He wanted to be an electrician potentially. There's a lot of things he wanted to do besides boxing, but how could you catch up your whole family, in 10 years, off being an electrician? It was impossible. You could pay your bills, but not the aunts, the uncles, he wanted everybody to live a good life. He called it Mr. Must Have It. We got to get the cash now. We need lump sums. So he's like, if you're not in that position, why in the world would you box? He didn't love it that much, that he would have done it without the money. I think he learned to love it. So having said that, for us, he's like, you don't want for anything. Got you a car. Always have a place to stay. You don't even have to pay for your education. And also you have a name where people inherently may even trust you to give you a shot at something because of you have the same name I do. After all I've done, why would you box, And so I think it has a lot to do with just the concept of that, I do think he's starting to understand that, that some of us can just be passionate about it and love it. But that was the initial thing.
I find that so interesting because these days, many of us would rather be a boxer or be in fitness or I guess you could say make a name for yourself using the tools that we have in this age, rather than be an electrician or be a teacher.
Exactly.
Complete opposite.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I'm not a historian, but I think just things have changed. I think the ability to work, take home a paycheck, be paid up front, above board, have a bank account, own land. A lot of these to vote, that was all new for them, that generation. For us, that's kind of are you kidding me? Are we really talking about the idea that you might not have those opportunities, So I think for us, it's very different. And I think we're very fortunate to live in this time, where we don't have to have that attitude.
I think there's a level of anxiety that comes with not having a stable job or degree or backing like that.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's something that they've experienced for decades, for years. So
yeah, can you imagine that ever going away? He was last thing I'll say about him, he was the guy that was chased down by the cops for robbing people. He had robbed somebody. He deserved to get chased by the cops. But they sent German shepherds after him, and he laid under what do you call it? A shotgun house, and he didn't want them to smell him. And he had seen on TV that the criminals would hide in the water to throw off the scent when dogs were looking for them. And so he was under the house and he saw a busted sewage pipe and there was poop coming out.
Oh my God.
Urine, and he just smeared it all over his body, right? And he said that was when he decided he was never going to steal again, by the way, too. I think he was 17 or something like that. So he survived that, but then also had a moment where he was working with his mom in the kitchen. And once again, this is, all in our lifetime. And, they weren't allowed to go out to where the people were being served. So they weren't allowed on that side. They had to stay in the kitchen because of their race, right? And then the only reason I know this is, once again, he never complained about race at all. But what he would say is he remembers that with positivity because he figured out which spatula and frying pan that the chef liked, and he'd always keep it fresh and ready for the chef. And he said we would get better food in the back than they got out in the front,
Oh, man.
So, but even though he has that positive attitude, which I appreciate, and he passed on to me, yeah, when when it's 2003, I don't know that you forget those things, the anxiety that comes along with how things don't have to be this way, right?
So you're growing up in a lot of states, like I was, right? Like Texas and Indiana. So where do you live right now?
Today I live in California. I live in Malibu.
Okay. How's that different from where you grew up?
It's very different. I mean, look, we always lived in like the suburbs of the country, and that's why I'm so grateful to my parents for providing that for us, so we didn't have to live in like quote unquote bad neighborhoods, so to speak. And but it's just very different. Yeah, I think the I don't know. I mean, we can't even yell at our kids where I'm at, and like that's not even appropriate. We definitely know spankings are not cool. It's safe. I don't know. Like I leave my door open all the time. It is just a different world than even I grew up in. So I don't know. It's like heaven, to be honest, compared to what I expected life would be like, based on where we came from.
So what gave you the idea for craft boxing?
Craft came out of kind of necessity. I had and so I was 16-0. This is 2013, 12. Took some time off of boxing, and I realized like I didn't want to use boxing to pay my bills. When I say my bills, just my bare necessities: car, house, maybe a little savings, not much, nothing. But I didn't want boxing to do that. I wanted boxing to be something I could do for fun.
Yeah.
And so fun and it's a passion, and it's not always fun. And so I said, how can I make a living doing something I love? And while I've been learning to box, I've been teaching people to box for free in my spare time, losing money doing it. But I was like, you know what? I think I'm pretty good at this. So let me turn this into a business. Then I can be at the gym all the time. And then I can box when it makes sense. I don't have to take fights last minute and so on and so forth. And that I opened my first gym in Boston, where I had been in prep school when I was young. And for a lot of reasons, I had friends there and such. And I thought it was a better market than Houston at the time. Boxing fitness was kind of like new. And then long story short, I tried to get my first training camp going, and like I couldn't consistently train at the same day every time, which is a no-no in boxing if you can't do that. And after like 2 training camps that I stopped, I said, you know what? I'm not going to do it if I can't respect the sport. And that business was doing so well that I would like lose money for the business when I would stop to train. In terms of momentum. And so we opened a second one, and we opened a third one, and we opened a fourth one. And I never gave myself time to like stabilize and make time to go back to my boxing career. So anyway, long story short, COVID happened. We had 12 gyms at the time, 8 of those franchises. And we actually did pretty well in COVID because we did some digital stuff. But long story short, I ran into some issues with the group I was with, and it seemed like it was better for me to kind of do my own thing. And again, start from scratch again. So I won't drag you through that long story. And that company still operates, and wish them all the best. But I figured I got into a position where I could live anywhere I wanted, and but some of my friends didn't make the cut when I was no longer at the other company. And so I wanted to start a company, number one, to give my friends an opportunity that worked with me to transition, so they could make ends meet personally, the same, pay their bills, doing what they know how to do. And then if they decided to go do something else after that, great. So I said, what do I know how to do the most? I know how to open gyms and operate gyms, and I understand fitness. So I said, let's start craft boxing as number one away for me to get my friends back in action. But number two, in terms of just the passion behind the business, I really do believe boxing has like a healing power. And I think all types of fitness modalities have an element of healing, a strong element. I think boxing has the strongest for me. And I wanted to make it as accessible as possible to like the masses. That's really the goal. And I want to make it not just throwing punches, not just hitting bags, but like the whole craft. Like not just the technique, understanding footwork and drills and all that, but like, man, how do you getting your mind right to get into the ring, bouncing back, like getting your butt kicked, and like what type of mentality it takes to come back from that and actually be a better fighter mentally than you were before you got your butt kicked, right? That takes a certain, thing, being able to trust a corner and listen to them. There's so much. And so for craft, it's to me, at its heart, it's an emotional health company. That's what it's about, like helping people achieve their optimal emotional health. And I think we're not the end all. There's so many ways to get there. I think from a physical standpoint, boxing is the most efficient modality to get people there. And I just wanted, I want to make sure we can scale it, but scale it with the authenticity. I think it'll help a lot of people.
So why is it that you feel that such an interesting perspective to me? Because I believe in a way that a lot of these fitness modalities are definitely healing, as you say. Is competitiveness kind of something that you've integrated into craft boxing?
A little bit. I think competitiveness, it's important. Because some people respond to that especially some people respond to it, and some people don't always respond to it, but they respond to it at certain points in their journey. But I think it's more about competing with yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Boxing forces you to compete with yourself because it puts you're in these moments all the time where when you start to like really learn the craft and get challenged, where you're like, I know I can do better. I know I can do better. I know I could beat this person. I could have performed better in this round or performed better. And the minute you like, I could have threw 120 punches, and then you threw 130, and you're like, oh, I could throw 160. You know, the same thing happens with the technique. Like now that I can keep my balance in my back foot when I jab and throw my right cross, like I can do other things now that I couldn't even think about before I got my balance. So, and then when you spar, right, especially if you spar somebody smaller than you, fat, and like less weight and shorter than you, or older than you, maybe they're bigger, but they're older. But someone that has some sort of like, where you have some sort of edge that you would think would give you and they beat you up, like, you know that there's so much to do to get better, but it's about you getting better. It's not about you beating the person up. It's about competing with yourself. And I think that's one of the things that makes it so special. You got to conquer yourself.
I love that, man. I do. I think that stands too in the fitness industry and bodybuilding as well, and training. I think a lot of people have found healing through training, bro. Like breakups make bodybuilders, man. And
I love that. I never heard that, but hey, man,
it's like a thing. It's like it used to be even like a YouTube series or something like a decade ago or whatever. Breakups make bodybuilders. Like there's some sad ass music with like some motivational jackass dudes lifting. It's funny as shit.
It's true. I've seen it.
But I love what you just presented there, because the thing about bodybuilding has been so powerful for a lot of people as well. Bodybuilding, fitness, like just going to the gym and progressing yourself. You know, you're like, you're lifting this weight and it's quantitative. So, you know, the next time you come around, you want to be able to lift this weight. Same thing with boxing, right? But the thing about it though, that I have found has been, the thing about the fitness industry that I think I'm seeing more common these days, though, is that people are starting to victimize themselves with, like, say, their genetics, or there's a lot of talk now about this natty or not stuff, like who's using natty or not.
Natty or not?
Yeah, so like who's using like performance enhancing drugs and who's not, right? And so everybody, there's just this thing where people are starting to victimize themselves, like I could never get there and I can never get that. The thing I like about boxing is that I think it's harder. It's harder for you to just be like, I don't have the genetics to beat this guy.
That's true. Mm. That is very true, because it's so the skill. It rewards skill and your mental so much, versus the physical piece. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, but basically, there's like this. There's still this hope that you can achieve that skill level in order to beat it is who you want to, or beat who beat you last time, right? I mean, and then I'm assuming that you also have like, do you like you have classes as well, right? So you're not gonna have a 6'5" guy fighting a 5'5" dude.
No, I mean, out of the gym, the like only the, I'd say 1 or 2% at most of our community ever actually spars.
Okay.
Most of the people just take classes in private training, but they're in the atmosphere where people spar and that means something. And they're always thinking maybe I could, and maybe it's 2 years from now, you know. But at any given time, it's only like 1 or 2% of our people who are actively engaging in like, competitive boxing. But you'd be surprised, for some reason all the they still get like 99% of the benefits of boxing without actually like being at risk of getting hit for some reason, you know. But then secondly, I love what you said. It's like there's always hope, you know. And with boxing especially, like if you look at Muhammad Ali when he fought my dad, I'll just use an example that some sports people would understand. Like there was seemingly no hope for Ali, but he knew, man, this guy can, you know, he's a wrecking machine, but if he has no gas, the car can't run. It just is what it is. And he's like, if I can figure out how to take his gas, especially without him knowing that that's my goal, you know, when he's got no gas, he's got no gas. It just is what it is. Can I survive? Man, who would ever thought I'm going to go to the gym to figure out how to survive for 8 to 9 rounds and literally get beat up for 8 to 9 rounds and, you know, sacrifice my ribs, my kidneys, be able to get knocked out on my feet and lean on the ropes and come back too. I'm going to practice for that. And I'm going to be considered the greatest fighter of all time after this. And boxing can do that for you. And it had nothing to do with physicality. It really didn't. It had to do with smarts. So I do think it is like that. I've never heard someone put it like that, though. That's pretty cool.
I really just hope that in fitness and bodybuilding that people will relieve themselves from this victimization of genetics. Like I understand that the genetics are out there. You know, even in basketball, you know, it's pretty easy to see it. But I do truly believe that the number one factor comes down to training consistency and time. And time being number one, right? So the people that you've seen training since they were 10 years old, since they were 8 years old, there's a reason that they're the best. Yeah. And it's not because of genetics. It's because they put in the time in there. Like work is it's like force times distance. The way I see it is the amount of work that you're putting in times the amount of time that you put in is like your overall level of experience and most likely your skill level too. And I think that that's true with anything fitness related.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think if you look at, I hate to be cliche, but I like to look at examples that everybody can either think of in their head or go Google. But if you look at a guy like Kobe Bryant, right, and look at his athleticism, his competitiveness, and all those things which he's known for, right? But if you ask yourself, what would a Kobe be without the hours and hours and hours of work that he's been putting in since he was like 12 or something like that? I think it was, or 10 or something. And most of it now we most of us know those stories about him since he's passed because there's a lot more storytelling now. But what would he be? I think you would find out like he would be 70% of the NBA, you know, 60% of the NBA. And I mean the volume of people that come in and out of the league every year who can jump out of the gym, they can shoot, they're faster than him, you know. They have a lot of they're competitive, they like to win, but they're not putting in the hours, right? They probably are more competitive, maybe more athletic, all those things. But they come and go like that, you know, because they haven't put in the hours of work. So he would probably be lesser, in my opinion, a guy like him than a lot of the people that we've seen that are spectacular in the NBA that come and go after 3 or 4 years. He'd probably be even lesser without that work ethic. So I agree with you. I think we think a lot of these people are genetics, but I think they're a base level of genetics. But I think they're probably 80, 90% work ethic. I really believe that.
I believe that too. I love that you said that 80 to 90% work ethic. So in this entire like space that you've been working, you started as a professional boxer, and then you moved to creating craft boxing. Was there anything in the process that gave you anxiety?
Anxiety. I think I don't know. There's like 2 types of anxiety I get. I think one is like, dear God, so sorry. I don't know why I keep yawning.
No,
it's not like me at all today.
It's Monday.
It's Monday. I was like, but long story short, I do that right before I compete too. I like yawn. Like Apollo Ono does it as well, apparently. But as soon as I hop in the ring, the first thing I do is yawn. But long story short, I think, I don't know, anxiety's been a hard one for me to perceive. I think I'm always in a constant state of anxiety, like mild, low-grade anxiety, because I'm not 100% sure I'm doing exactly what I'm uniquely suited to do. And I feel like just in our conversation talking about genetics, I think like, to the person who's, maybe 5'9.5", and, thinks like, if I was 6'6", what I could do in the NBA, right? And, me and you might say, well, yeah, you should know if you're not over 6 feet, like it's slim to no chances that you're going to do in the NBA, right? But they could push themselves and push themselves and push them and maybe even get there, right? There's people like Allen Iverson who's just a hair taller than that, and Muggsy Bogues, and there are these names that did it. And they get close or they dominate, and it's a great story, but they never get a big contract, or they coach in college, or and do better that way, or become a private coach, or long story short, there's other things they can do, right? Because they mastered their craft, right? I think we know that path. But what if underneath it all there were the attributes of work ethic, some physicality, some genetics, right, that they applied to basketball, the attention to detail, the ability to build relationships and thrive on a team. What if they thought like those are all the things that made them uniquely suited to dominate in basketball? They just had to get over the 5'9" hump. What if those qualities were actually for them? They were actually uniquely suited in a special way to dominate at something else, and they didn't know. And they put all that energy into basketball, right? That's my the thing that makes me sweat sometime at night, where I'm like, am I doing the right thing? Am I like close, but I'm just like on the other side of the door, like 10 feet away from being able to like be where I'm supposed to be. Maybe it is basketball, or maybe it's something close to basketball that uses those same talents and so on and so forth. And I would hate to, live my life dedicating myself to something for 20, 25 years and realize, oh, there's this little voice in the back of my head telling me that, like for me, sometimes I think like being a public speaker is what I should be doing, because I do enjoy it. Like I'm comfortable in front of crowds. I love connecting with people. Like I love discussing ideas and all these things, but I'm applying it to like group fitness, right? Maybe it's speaking. Maybe I should put this down at some point, or like minimize how much energy I put into it and put more of that energy into public speaking. But like, I don't know exactly how to do it. And I hate the fact that I could waste my life and be just, one little notch this way from being able to be in my life's purpose.
Yeah.
So there's that mild anxiety. And I feel like bigger than that for everybody, I feel like everybody without knowing it probably suffers from that type of anxiety, not knowing if they're in their life's purpose. Outside of that, man, like I've had a panic attack once. I had one, and that was crazy. And it was because at the time I wasn't making as much money as I was used to making, and I wasn't able to like pay for my mom's dinner. Like I wasn't able to buy everybody's food, and that like really messed me up for some reason. I'll never understand why. Like cry me a river, right? Like that's not, you shouldn't have anxiety about not being able to buy everybody dinner, but I did, and I like couldn't breathe and crying, and it went away. And then now I think I've gotten to the point where when I am like maybe a day or two from getting there, I'm able to like peep it, get some extra rest, go for a run, watch a movie. But I feel like I know how to manage myself so I don't get to that point. Those have been my experiences thus far. I'm only 40 years old though, so I'm sure I may have bouts with it later in my life that I haven't,
I think that's super powerful and relatable, man, especially as a man. Bro, I would. It's the best feeling to be able to buy everyone's dinner. I think it's just something that comes along with being a leader and a support. Something that you want to be for your wife, for your family, for your kids, for the people that you love around you. I think it's the most powerful thing, and probably one of the most fulfilling feelings that you can have in life as a man. So, I can understand that, and I do feel. I believe we all suffer from that. I know we all suffer from that, and it's this it's not just like a decision fatigue, but it's just this what if, and there's always going to be a what if in the back of your head, because decisions are probably one of the hardest things that you can really just make in life, because you never know, right? You don't know what would have happened. You only know what's now, and it's it's very easy for us to fantasize when it comes to the other option that doesn't exist, right? You look at Bollywood movies and our ideas of love, and we like to fantasize of what if or what we could have. But the reality is that never happens. It never happens.
Yeah, typically we get worse. So a worse version, yeah.
Requires a lot of work to create that beautiful lifelong relationship. And then I think it's the work that you put in really yielding those beautiful results that makes it so fascinating and so wonderful, right? So I personally, just a personal opinion, think that you're doing amazing things, man. I think you're doing something really powerful with craft boxing because, as you said, it's not simply for fitness. It's a place for healing. And I think that's a very fulfilling thing that you could be doing. So when I think about things like this, because I have these thoughts all the time, but it's always like I need somebody else to tell me and remind me. I think our purpose must align with what we want to do. And it's hard for us to decide what we want to do. But I think, I don't think it should be aligned with what our skills are or what we're good at, but what we find purpose in life. Like if you find purpose in helping people find themselves and become better and, find healing through things like craft boxing, then I think that's incredibly powerful purpose. I do.
Thank you. And I think amen to that. Focus on what you love doing first. If you love doing it, whether you're good at it or not, which I never hear anybody say, which it's so true, It's so true because you can get good at things, Sometimes it takes you more time than others, but you can get good. Yeah.
We'll get right back to the podcast in a second, but I just wanted to take this break to thank you guys immensely because this podcast is my favorite content to create, and I couldn't have done it without you guys. Contributing to it will further help its growth and allow us to listen to more amazing guests such as the one you're listening to today. So if you'd like to support the podcast, you can do so by rating us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you find your podcast, or subscribing to the YouTube channel. And if you would like to help fund the podcast, you can do so by using Nile for a discount off of Young LA clothing or huge supplements. Thank you guys again so much. We'll be right back to the podcast. Also, to something that you said earlier about never being able to go back to boxing because you started focusing on, creating gyms, and that was I guess a passion of yours, right? That you wanted to pursue. I feel the same way, and there's this common theme these days where everybody, I always say everybody, but I know a lot of people at least want to turn their passion into like a career, right? And I think that's an amazing thing that someone can do. But we have this like baseline of mentality, right? And once you achieve something, once you obtain something, it's easy for us to get used to it without practicing the muscle of seeing it as something new. So the people who want to create their passion into a career run the risk of turning their passion into a job.
That's right.
Having to feel like you have to do something definitely takes out the enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, I think to your point on that, I feel like it's not talked about enough, and I think we definitely live in an age where like everybody is, not everybody, but I think most people in the back of their head think they're supposed to be an entrepreneur or want to be an entrepreneur. That's like it's way better than having a job, which I don't think. I'm not going to say it's better than having a job. I think it's an option, and if you're naturally suited to like wake up and be fulfilled by being an entrepreneur and you have a job, you should transition for sure. But I don't think it's for everybody. But I think we live in an age where like everybody should have a side hustle. I think that's the vibe right now. Mm-hmm. And everyone should potentially work for themselves. And I don't think that's the case. In addition to that we should all be building businesses behind our passions. I think we should all be following our passion. For sure. But it's funny. No one really ever brings up what you just said. And I think it's an important point. Like, just because it's your passion doesn't mean it has to be a business. It could, number one, be a side hustle that maybe pays for your passion. And it's just a break-even thing. Or your passion was going to cost you $25,000 a year. Now it's going to cost you $3,000, because you're making $22,000 and you're losing $3,000. And it costs you $3,000 to just love life between the hours of 4 o'clock and 9 p.m. It could be that, or it could just be like, I can go on and on, but it doesn't have to be the way you make your living. Now, should you hate the way you make your living? No. But I do think there needs to be something said for the people that say, hey, I can do this. I'm good at it. I find a little bit of purpose, but my passion's over here, and I'm not going to use my passion to make money because I don't want to turn it into something I hate, you know? That's not talked about enough, and it's a good point. It really is. Great point.
This is totally a little bit unrelated, but if you had 3 descriptive things to tell somebody to help them become a strong boxer or the best boxer that they could ever become, what would it be?
You got to find your lane for confidence. You know, whatever you can do to, like, you need to take an inventory and understand, are you confident? Are you insecure? You know, are you either one of those, you know, where do you fit on that spectrum? And what can I do to become my most confident self so that when I am in a position where I need to access all of my knowledge, all of my wit, all of my timing, my speed, I need to access all of me. You can't do that without confidence. Even adrenaline can't make you do that, because if you don't have the confidence, adrenaline is going to make you go nuts. Your hands are going to go flying everywhere, and you're going to be bouncing around, wasting your energy. Adrenaline can mobilize the energy you need to be your best self, but to lock in and focus that, you need confidence, right? And a lot of that confidence comes from repetition, but you got to get your mind right. So I figure
it's all in the mind.
Yeah, so figure out that lane, and I can't suggest one as this piece of advice because it's different for everybody. Number 2, you gotta find a good trainer, you know, and find out where they're at. Move if you need to, you know, if it's that important to you. And fashion your life around being able to spend time with that coach, and you need to trust them. And it's hard to find a good coach, you know. So in the meantime, still be practicing your fundamentals, but it needs to be part of like your journey to find your coach, the perfect coach for you. And finding that coach is kind of like finding somebody to marry, you know, because they're preparing you for war. They're preparing you to potentially make a lot of money doing something you love, or master a craft that you can pass on. It can be, you know, a life skill and something that helps you find happiness and centeredness. They could be giving you a skill that you'll use to protect yourself in deep. But it's like you're learning a real life skill, and it's important that you find somebody that connects with you. Thirdly, it's getting control of your vices. And I think in doing that, you're going to find some of the focus and discipline it takes to be a boxer. And those things just slow you down, right? I'm not saying that you can't ever drink, but you need to be able to not drink if you need to. I'm not saying you can't ever eat, but you need to be the ability to not eat for 2 or 3 days if it comes down to it, or 7 days. You need that type of control. You got to figure that out. To get up at 5 a.m. and run, you don't have to do that every day. You can run at night, but you need the discipline to be able to get up at 5 a.m. and go to sleep at 8:30 and do that for 6 days. You need that type of mind that can will yourself to do that with the flip of a switch. So I think get in control of your vices, and double down on discipline. And it's one of those things that you can practice discipline with your cleanliness. You can practice discipline with your mental hygiene and the things you do to keep yourself fresh mentally. You can practice discipline with your time management. Find a lane to practice it and really get good at it, because you're going to need it.
Discipline is extremely hard.
It's tough.
It's hard.
It's kind of a forgotten word.
It is. My favorite quote from Jocko Willink: "Discipline eats motivation for breakfast."
Yeah,
it's such a good one, bro.
Yeah, it dominates motivation.
Everybody loves motivation these days. They love the motivation videos.
Yeah, it's like sugar.
It is. I can't even say anything really, because I feel like all my content just blew up from essentially like motivation videos.
But I mean, it's part of it. You know, I think I look at discipline, motivation, and sacrifice is like, because I think discipline and sacrifice are different, but I feel like they're kind of like even with like a lot of the racial tension we've had. I don't know why I keep bringing that up today, but
no,
apparently
please
I got the
do.
spirit.
I actually just had a podcast with my friend Benji, and he was telling me about we both experienced hate crime as a kid.
Yeah.
He was in his school, and someone like threw a brick through like the school window and said like I was going to kill the chink. So he wasn't allowed to go to school for like weeks. Wow. Every time we talk about it, I love hearing about it.
Okay, well, that number one, that's horrible. But number two, like I said, I don't know. I just got the spirit today, but it just keeps coming up because I'm not political really. and this is not even political what I'm about to say, but I think with what happened a few years ago with the BLM movement and the riots and all the changes that everybody's been trying to make, and we're trying to figure it out. There's no playbook, and kudos to everybody who's just trying to take it serious, whether they're doing the right thing or wrong thing. But long story short, I think when we look at that, we have to look at is protesting bad or is it a part of it, right? Is legislation bad or is it a part of it? Is what you do at home with your friends and how you influence them with what they see you doing, the people who watch you on social media, your nephew, my daughter, right? Your kids, your own household, like family dinner, family reunions, what you're doing, is that bad or is that a part of it? I think they're all a part of the solution, right? I think there's short-term, mid-term, and long-term solutions. And I think sometimes there's a lot of debate and people getting mad at each other because they disagree on what the solution is, when in actuality, it's all part of a spectrum of the solution, right? I'm not a protester. You're never going to see me outside with a sign. I'm not going to throw a brick through. That's not me. It's not who I am. It's not my gifts. I'm not against protesting, or I don't know. I don't have an opinion on it. It's just not who I am, right? I think destruction, and I think there's a limit to it. Don't get me wrong. But I think I'm more kind of like applied. Like, I'm also not a politician, but I'm the type of person that will, hire people that maybe have a checkered past and give them a second chance and watch them do it to other people. I can affect my community that way, and I see that as midterm solutions, right? And so I think with life, and I'm trying to remember the question you asked me, and I've gotten on a tangent. What you brought up that made me go over to that.
We're talking about discipline, eating, motivation for breakfast.
Yes. So I think there's discipline. I'm so glad you brought that up again. I think sacrifice can be like a short-term, solution. As an example, I'm trying to think through this in real time. I think motivation's either even shorter term, right? It's kind of like caffeine, right? But really you need more sleep and you need to get your adrenals in check and like all this stuff.
Absolutely.
And then, but long-term is discipline, right? Maybe it's discipline is long-term, sacrifice is midterm, and motivation is like right now, I need that shit. Like what's going to get your friend off the couch when it's like, yo, don't talk to your friend about discipline. Mm-hmm. I don't think now is the right time to talk about sacrifice. Like he hasn't been off the couch in 8 days. He's been playing video games. He stopped responding to his mom's phone call, right?
Yeah.
That he might need to talk. He might need it. You got this.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. Hey, man, come on. Bro, come on. Look, whatever it is. He says, all right, hold on 1 second. Let me go to the restroom. And you wait, and you're late to your gym appointment or your time because he took 5 more minutes or she took 5 more minutes or whatever, And you guys get there, and he gets on the treadmill, and he walks off, and all right, thanks. He's been shot, pow, like a deer. And I hate to talk about, but sometimes you shoot a deer, and you have to now track it for 2 or 3 miles. And then it's finally fallen, and now you can take it. They don't fall right away, But you hit them with a bullet. And that sometimes motivation is a bullet. Boom, now it's in their head. And he's like, I did feel good after that. Let me play video games for another week and think about this, right? Yeah. And then once they're motivated and the motivation starts to wane, and they come back and say, I'm lacking motivation, man, and da-da-da-da. I'd be like, bro, fuck motivation, discipline. Yeah. That's the speech. Yes. Now we're talking about discipline, and then eventually, so on and so forth. So I think while my discipline does eat motivation for lunch and breakfast and all that, and motivation is not dependable, I think it's important for it to be there.
I love that, dude. I love that you said that. That's so true, because the way I see it is motivation is for your feelings, right? If you're at a point where you just don't feel good ever, and it just doesn't matter, but you just feel like such shit that you just don't want to get up that couch, then there's not much that's going to change that. Yeah. But if you've been able to like get that shot, stand up, and for at least, a couple sessions or something, do what it is that you got to do. The way I see it is that once you got that train running, discipline is being able to do it again without the feelings, is being able to do it while ignoring the feelings, right? Moving forward, and you could ignore the feelings, or there's other ways that I do myself, such as And this is all like mind power, just like you say, when you need to have confidence when you're up there. This all deals with like your mind. Your mind is a muscle. Practicing, like realizing that when I do this, I'm going to feel a whole lot better on the other side. And just thinking and meditating on that feeling that I just experienced. And then using that to move me forward instead of like feeling good now to get to the gym. Like everyone wants to take a pre-workout before the gym. So finally they get hyped up and then they go to the gym. I'm like, to be honest, I've been recently doing this thing where I just make myself go to the gym without pre-workout, and I get the natural dopamine rush from lifting like halfway through my actual workout. And then it keeps me going. Yeah. It's fucking hard to go to the gym when you're tired as shit, for sure. But if you just think about it like a monk thinks about catching him, like a monk doesn't think about catching himself on fire when he does protest. I don't know if you've heard of those.
He does what?
So there's monks. I can't remember if
they think about catching themselves.
So there's monks that have caught themselves on fire as a sign of protest.
Wow.
They will just be sitting there cross-legged, and they expect nothing to happen. They don't anticipate anything. And this, I thought about this too because you were talking about yawning.
Yeah.
And I realized that I yawn sometimes too when I have something that I'm anticipating. So, for example, after this podcast, you're going to go to the gym in, where is it?
Calabasas.
In Calabasas, right? Yeah. I'm not sure what it is all that you're going to do. But if I was in that position, I feel like my body would be anticipating that and like conserving its energy for that.
That's true.
And
getting more oxygen.
Right.
Too.
And it's something that like you don't even think of, you don't force it to happen, but simply because you know that it's going to happen, it's like your body is really reacting to that. So a monk overcomes this. A monk, through meditation, doesn't anticipate anything, doesn't expect anything to happen. And so their level of like mental pain is just flatlined. Whereas other people, sometimes the pain is worse beforehand than it actually is when they experience it. You know what I mean?
They feel it in anticipation.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then when the monk lights himself on fire, it's like one giant fucking spike, and then
that's crazy. That's crazy. But it is the way the body and mind is. It's how it works. I think I have a therapist I work with, and her name's Susie, and she just always screams at me. Susie's like 73, acts like she's 53. She's like, George. She's like, I think she curses. I think she says, fuck motivation. I don't give a shit about your feelings. All right? She'll say stuff like that. She's like, it's about your actions. She's like, all that matters is your actions. And what she means by that is just like you said, you're not going to wait around. At some point, you're not going to get the feeling to go to the gym. The feeling's gone and it's not coming back, right? And if you sit around and wait till you feel like it, it's not happening. It's just you got to have the action and know that on the other side of it, you're going to feel better. Whether you do feel better or not, just choose the action, right? Because you got your goal to get to. But then you touch on something. Do you listen to Huberman's podcast?
Yes.
He had a podcast, and I listened to it the other day. I've only listened to a few, but it was talking about how to manage like dopamine levels. And he was just like, if you can get into the habit of, if you can get yourself to the place where during the hardest reps, or whether it's cardio or whatever, but during the hardest part, you can somehow enjoy it, right? To where your body looks forward to it and doesn't say, oh my God, this is hard, I need it to stop. It says, oh my God, this is hard, this is good, I need more, right? Which I'm not there yet. It sounds like you're there. That's like the best way to have a relationship with dopamine in your workouts, if that makes any sense. And then he said a lot of the people who achieve greatness in athletics and sports get there, you know? That's what he said. I don't know if it's true, but it sounds like it.
No, it's 100% true, man. It's insane to think, but even though it sounds all like woo-woo and sometimes even a little hippie, the mind is everything. Our perception is everything, man. And I wouldn't say I'm necessarily there because it's a muscle I have to continue practicing every day. Just like, you know, when you wake up with your wife and you guys have been together for 30, 40 years, you kind of want to like practice thinking of her as a new human being every day. You know, otherwise the shit gets old. So like one of the things I practice, for example, is rejection. I enjoy it because every time I get rejected, but I keep going, I've become one step stronger. So that's just the mindset. It's like every time I get rejected from something, I'm that much better, that much more powerful.
You've changed your hormonal response to rejection.
Yeah. It's almost kind of like exciting now for me to like put myself in a place where I think I could get rejected.
Wow, that's powerful.
And
That's
to be
powerful.
honest, I feel like
I'm going to tell my whole team that today. Go ahead, please.
Oh yeah, but yeah, and I feel like it's led me to have more confidence too. So I almost feel like I get rejected less because it's like I don't know if the confidence is kind of, I don't know if the energy is detected or what, but
it probably goes along with it, you know, because you're not going into those situations with angst, you know. They can feel that your whole being is different going into the situation where you might get rejected. You know, you're right. Makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna use that.
Oh yeah. It's another reason I think that what you're doing is freaking awesome, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really all about that mentality.
Amen.
So if you had like 3 exercises that you would give someone to help them become like the best boxer.
Let's see. I hate to say it because I'm trying to figure out a way around it because I have a nagging hamstring injury right now, but from running. Running, you know, and that you don't have to run 10 miles or 3 or 1 or whatever, but you should run as a fighter. Boxing, you should find a way to like learn how to run. So you're limiting impact because you need it. And there's other ways to do it to get that constant, like, you know, relaxation, you know, explosive step. You need that for boxing. It gives you a certain bounce and springiness in your legs you need in the ring. And then also from it, if you're not struggling with overuse injuries, your wind, the ability to recover, your endurance, the oxygen to your muscles, the blood flow, that discipline about getting up in the morning. But I think learning how to run and becoming a good runner, I've tried every way around it. For me and my fighters, you got to have it, you know? To what extent you have it? Are you running every day? Are you hitting the track twice a week instead of running 5 miles every day? That might be the answer. I'm not sure, but it needs to be in there and figure out what that means for you. And then supplement around it with other types of cardio, the airdyne bike, the rower, the ski erg. Hiking is awesome, right? That actually may be the answer. Hiking large inclines and so on and so forth with weighted vests. So you need road work. I'll just put it like that. Deadlift. And there's different ways to train the deadlift pattern, right? Because we use like in terms of the full range of motion of a deadlift, we use probably like 30 or 40% of the full range, you know, with like every time you throw a power punch, which would be like if you're in an orthodox position and you throw a right cross, right? And then when you pull that right cross back and you throw a left hook behind it, that's deadlift power, right? Wow. You're using your rotational chain, but the most power you can get out of it throwing a cross and a hook is going to come from your glutes and hamstrings and your erectors and your lats all working together in unison, your posterior chain. So I would say deadlifting, but learning the right type of programming to do with your deadlifting. You don't need heavy weight from time to time. Is great to just build your structure and, you know, fire the hormones and all that. But I think it's more about, you know, medium, you know, lifting depending on the size of your body, anywhere from like 75 pounds, which is not a lot. Let's call it 80 to 160 with lots of reps. Let me pick this up and put it down 8 to 10 times, rest. Let me go do it again 8 to 10 times. Chopping wood, digging holes, because it's repetitive deadlift and reverse deadlift patterns. Like when you swing the axe down, that's like a ski erg. When you pull the axe out of the wood, which is why like hitting with a sledgehammer is not the exact same thing. You have to like jimmy the axe out of the wood and pull it back up. Mm-hmm. That's the deadlift, right? So, and the harder you swing it in and out creates a resistance. So you need some way to mimic that, which is why kettlebell swings, figure eights to a hold, cleans and snatches with a kettlebell, I think are great if you can't chop wood. So the deadlift pattern, figuring out how to tune that. And then lastly, breathing. There you go. Getting control of that diaphragm, expanding the diaphragm. A lot of it comes from core endurance. I think mobility, and there's so much more, you know, but I think your posterior chain, running, and breathing exercises will serve you really well, in addition to all the other things.
Damn, that's awesome, bro. I just learned so much in the last 5 minutes. That's crazy, bro. Holy crap.
It's true. It's true.
Deadlifting. Okay, gotcha. Maybe I need to go back to implementing more deadlifts in my program.
Pick it up, put it down.
Oh, shit.
RDLs primarily, like RDLs type with a micro bend in your knee.
So just these the last two questions. what's the biggest lesson that you learned throughout your life?
Biggest lesson. Oh, there's so many. There's like 3 or 4. I'm trying to pick one.
You could say a couple too.
Yeah, I think one is to anybody who's a leader, is trying to be a leader, or just happens to have fallen into the position of having to be the leader or whatever it wants to be. I think just knowing that, you can't expect, if you expect people to think the way you think, the people you're leading to think the way you think, to be motivated the way you're motivated, to listen to them, to listen to you and their peers the way you listen to them. If you expect them to have all these qualities, you're just not going to last, right? Emotionally, and you're just not going to work out. And I think you have to reflect on yourself and say, if I'm in this position and I find myself to be somewhat reasonably good at it, it's because you're unique and special. And play into that. Don't be cocky. Don't be self-absorbed. But just realize, like, I have something special and I need to be good at it. And other people have other special talents, right? And you might be a leader because you're not good at the things that they can really focus on that you can't. But the point is, you can't expect people to perceive and act and make decisions and feel the way you do about things. You need to be curious about all the differences they have versus you, right? All the differences there are between you and them. That has been a big lesson, I'd say, at the family level, the friend level, and the professional level. I think to those of you who are generous, I would say, generally speaking, people who rely on your generosity don't want what you give them. They'll take it, right? They'll say thank you. They may even, make it very clear to you that they can't survive without it. But they don't want what you give them. They want what you have. And you're never going to change that. So be at peace with it. And then the last thing I think I would say is just, man, like family, like the love you have and the relationship you can have with family, right? A family could be a friend, that you guys ride or die for each other. It could be a son or daughter, a brother, your relationship with your mom. But that positive relationship with the family, positive relationship where you guys are having each other's back and looking after each other, and there's back-to-back fighting if it comes down to it, like swinging. A positive, like, healthy relationship with family, I think, there's nothing more worth living for. That's like the one of the best things in life, and I think everybody should try to get a little bit of that. You have to have a good relationship with yourself to get there, but I think it's important.
I love that, dude. The second one, though, you said, I'm trying to remember what the last thing you said in the second one.
Oh, people don't want what you give them, they want what you have.
Yeah. Can you explain that? Yeah.
So like I think a lot of us get into situations where we're like, man, I did this for this person, I did that for this. And I think my negative, not negative, but kind of like, quippy version of that, or whatever you want to call it, that kind of is like, when you help people, they hate you, right? You kind of have to assume that. But if you go back and look at all the people you've helped in your life, you probably find, half of them at least have somehow had a negative moment with you after you helped them, or had found a way to say something bad about you. You just had a funny moment that didn't reflect the support you've given them, when you have those, and there are some special people, right, that aren't like that. But I like to say, if you help them, they hate you, right? And I think there's subliminally, and this is just my opinion, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope I live long enough to find out that I'm wrong, that when you help people, it could not make the fact that they're not where they want to be in life and being able to be self-sufficient, it couldn't make that more real for them, right? When you have to walk up to a person and say, here's a loaf of bread, because I know if without this, you're going to starve, right? I would appreciate it. I'm also a giver, right? So maybe that's why I appreciate it. I don't know. I would love it. It doesn't make me feel any type of way. And I'm like, man, I hope I can help that person one day. And there are people like that. But I think there's a lot of people that we don't know that'll say, they thank you, they say thank you, and they look at you, and you are the direct reflection of their inadequacies, the fact that they failed or didn't, however they're perceiving their life in a negative way, you're a direct reflection of that. And so I think, but you as the giver, you're like, oh, I would appreciate if someone gave something to me. Now I'm going to treat them the way I want to be treated. And I expect that they're going to appreciate me. And I feel like that can let a lot of people down when they don't get that back. Now, maybe they get positive treatment from that person the third time they give, the fourth time, and then one day you can't give. Or one day you missed that they expected you to give or whatever, and they snap at you, right? Or they act funny. Or they get successful and they don't want to go back to that time that you helped them. And that time, they don't want to mentally go back there. And all of a sudden they start acting like you never helped them or you weren't a part of their success, and it could hurt you, you know? And I just feel my point is don't let it hurt you, because they never wanted what you gave them. They wanted what you have. They wanted your ability to give. And they didn't have that. So I think that's it. I don't think people like receiving handouts. You know, when it's a short-term solution, like we talked about, like the motivation or whatever, when it's short-term and they absolutely have no fucking choice but to accept it. Yes, they like it. But I don't think long-term people like the idea of handouts.
Interesting.
And you're the one who did it to them without them being able to articulate that or reflect on it. I think there's something there.
I see. Yeah, I think a lot of the times we kind of don't think about that. Instead, we just find ourselves feeling like, well, why do I feel like I wasn't, why was I feel like I wasn't like thanked in actions afterwards? Or why do I feel like I got a shorthanded mistake? I think this happens to a lot of us. And in my personal opinion, I don't believe that this is ever intentional.
I agree.
Everybody, just by the way that we're built, we're meant to focus on ourselves first for pure means of survival. But I do think, at least for myself, the best way in the mental state for me to go through and about this is in giving, I've become closer to the person I want to be. Mm-hmm. And that's enough to make me feel good. And I believe in karma because I've seen it happen, and it will come back around in some way or fashion. Not necessarily from that person.
Yeah.
But it will. And then that's where I see other people giving to me as well. And it allows me to have an appreciation for that has been given to me.
Honestly, to me, that's the message. It's like people don't want what you give them, they want what you have. So don't expect anything. Continue to give. Believe in karma. Yeah. Believe in the gratifying feeling of helping people and what it does for you. I could go on, but don't believe that they're going to believe in karma. That's all I'm saying. Necessarily. Yeah, right. We hope they, and the thing I hate, the thing that's so important about that is like, I think what changes people who will somehow find it appropriate to return negative for when you were positive to them. What I think will change people is tragedies. Sometimes people run into some sort of tragedy and they're, oh my God. I can see, so wow, I was such an asshole. Why did I do that? But we can't sit around and wish tragedies on people, Yeah. So I think it's just about finding your own peace, and I love what you said about karma.
Mm-hmm. So I have this last question I ask everybody at the end of every podcast, but if you were to die tomorrow and you had one message that you could broadcast to the entire world, what would it be?
I think it's just listen to yourself and be accountable, I think, and to what I'm in a... I guess I need to say more to explain what I mean by that. But like, I think too many of us, when you listen to other people and don't achieve your dreams, you're going to blame them first. And then at some point you're going to be mature enough to blame yourself, And I don't think anybody wants to die or face the idea of their death knowing that, man, I could have just listened to myself. Not I could have just listened to my therapist, or I should have listened to my coach. Oh, I should have listened. Like, that's one thing. But then when you finally look up and you're old enough to say you've had enough experience to say, I could have just listened to myself. I think it's a dark feeling, right? If you don't have time to go back and listen to yourself and follow that path. But also be accountable. You listen to yourself, you have to get good at it. And we're taught as children, in my opinion, not to listen to ourselves. We listen to our parents. We listen to what they tell us at school, what's on TV, the internet, books, whatever. And we're supposed to yield and follow these. And if we feel uncomfortable, we say, shh, hold on. That's inappropriate. Say it like this, or don't say it like that, or hold your tongue, or just nod your head and listen, And that's okay. I think there's a part of that that's necessary for civilization, but we're trained not to listen to ourselves, generally speaking, right? Especially if you come from like my mom's an immigrant parents. And so I think, or you come from people who were raised in the Great Depression, right? Coming out of it. So I think we're trained not to listen to ourselves, and we really need to get better at it. Along with getting better at listening to ourselves comes mistakes. We have to immediately, just like reviewing a profit loss statement at the end of the month, what worked, what didn't, how do I not let that happen again? Because when you listen to yourself, you're going to make mistakes because you're not used to it. Number one, we're not trained to. Number two, you're going to make mistakes because that's part of life. You're going to fail, but we're going to learn, and we're going to learn. And if you start early listening to yourself and correct the mistakes, correct them, and you listen to advice and you consider it, but you make your own decisions, eventually you're going to get good at listening to yourself. And I think we're very dangerous when we're good at listening to ourselves. And we've developed that, ability to listen to our gut and process and so on and so forth. I think we're really dangerous, but we have to practice and not get scared when we make mistakes, but just don't make the same mistake 3 times. Then now not 2 times, now not 1 time, and now I'm not making the mistake twice anymore. I think that needs to be everybody's goal. I think we all can have special lives if we get into that.
That's powerful. We don't often think about listening to ourselves. In fact,
scared to.
Like sometimes we want to ignore ourselves.
Exactly. Scared to listen to ourselves, and it's tough. I'm not there yet, but I know enough now that there'd be a lot more peace there if I could get it.
Awesome. Thank you for that, man. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Glad to be with you, man. It's a lot of fun.
Where can everybody find you?
You can find me. Everybody can find me at Craft Boxing #1. We have the Craft Boxing Club. Just look up Craft Boxing. We'll pop up everywhere, like on IG, YouTube, so on and so forth, and the internet, of course. And then my name is George Foreman #3, and I'm on Instagram as George Foreman #3.
Nice.
George Foreman 3.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. Thank you everybody for listening. As usual, if you would like to support the podcast, you can do so by subscribing and rating us a 5 stars on anywhere you find your podcast, such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And then finally, if you would like to help fund the podcast as well, you could use a discount Nile for 15% off of Young LA clothing or huge supplements. George Foreman #3. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, guys. Peace. By the way, guys, this podcast was brought together by Fentanyl Solutions, a nonprofit organization that is spreading the awareness of fentanyl, the #1 killer for people between the ages of 14 and 50. Naloxone is a medication used to reverse the effects of an opioid or fentanyl overdose.